Hello, people. Today here, Fanny Anzai interviews. We have Thomas Sheedy. Thomas, am I saying your name right?
You are saying it right. Yes,
Okay.
Thomas Sheedy.
Yeah. My husband told me like because of your pronunciation, you should check it out because it can't sound bad. And I was like, okay, I will do it. So Thomas Sheedy, sorry. uh, Thomas Sheedy is the president of sorry, not American Atheists for Liberty. But we're going to talk about them as well.
Mhm.
So, Atheists for Liberty. What is the plan, Thomas? Can you tell us a little bit how did you become an atheist and how this project started for the ones that don't know you?
Sure. So first off, I want to say, Fanny, thank you so much for having me on the program. I really appreciate it. You're doing a lot of great things with your channel, and I'm glad to be on here to be added to sort of your collection of videos. So I'm the president of an organization called Atheists for Liberty. I'm a 22-year-old entrepreneur, and I became an atheist. I guess that's part of the question, right? I became an atheist when I was 15 years old. I was raised Roman Catholic in the United States, and I was kind of lapsed about Catholicism and Christianity. I didn't really have a strong commitment to faith as others have. I kind of seen a lot of practices of the Roman Catholic Church as sort of a joke, especially some of its political stances on certain issues, certain social issues that were a major talking point in American politics just a few years ago. Things like gay marriage, things like church-state separation, various things like that. And when I was around 15 years old, I remember I ended up seeing a Bill Maher clip from 2005 where he talked about how religion was kind of a joke and how you don't really need poison in your system, and you can sort of have the same mentality with Catholicism. So I remember this exact moment in May of like 2013, losing my faith immediately, and I've lived a fine life ever since. Um, since then, I've been involved in the organized atheist movement, or kind of now a ghost of its former self. I was heavily involved with numerous different atheist organizations, from being a student activist to being a local activist, being on various councils and committees. And now I am leading my own organization because of a force that ended up destroying the new atheist movement. The atheist movement is no longer what it used to be, like what it was years ago, a unifying, powerful movement that swept the Western world. Political extremists ended up taking it down from the inside, and because of that, myself and others have came to the conclusion that what was a strong atheist movement is no longer really salvageable from what existed at the time. So we felt like it was a necessity to create a new organization. That's what we did this year.
That's perfect. Thank you. So, as an ex-Catholic, I would go back to the beginning of the story. You as an ex-Catholic, you managed to come out of your beliefs or not so strong beliefs.
Mhm.
And I kind of parallel that when you were telling me the story. I believe maybe it is because we had more of a liberal parents that did not indoctrinate that much of
Well,
us
it was
when
kind
we
of a
think.
mix for me. My father, I guess he's more of a liberal moderate, I guess, when it comes to his politics. He's kind of in the center. You could argue maybe center left, center right, somewhere in the middle. A Bill Clinton Democrat. While my mother was a very staunch religious conservative. So I sort of got both ends of it, but I saw going to church when I was younger as just an annoying chore. I would much rather instead go get bagels down the road from the church, or go see my grandmother after church, or sleep in and not go to church, anything that didn't involve church. Because I saw church as sort of just a boring thing where I had to sit down, stand up, kneel, not really understand anything that was going on. And then later on, when I started to learn more about my faith, I started to realize that it had no basis in facts, no basis in reality, and I think it's just been a tool to keep human beings in some sort of structure for the last few thousand years.
Yeah.
Um, and so I abandoned it. I ditched it a few years ago, and I'm glad
That
I
that
did.
is funny. I felt the same way because I think everybody when you come, everybody has passed through some level of religious contact, or I
Mm-hmm.
would not even say indoctrination, because the same way I'm telling you, my parents did not really tell us to go or not. They would
Mm-hmm.
bring us sometimes when they come on the Sunday morning masses. And
Yeah.
for me, the same experience, I always brought back to my mom's like, why we need to wake up on Sunday early to dress up like we're going to a party, and it's not a party. You know,
No, it's
for
not
me,
a
the
party at
most
all.
annoying thing was because of in small cities like mine, this small town, everybody is dressed for church as going to party, and
Mm,
they are all looking at each other with those judging eyes.
right.
And I mentioned to my mom, I was like, I don't like going to that place. People just looking at us to see if we're dressed properly to go to that
Hmm.
place, to the party that's not a party.
Yeah.
It's not fun of a party. Like you mentioned, like I don't like to just sit and stand and kneel. And my parents would even like give money to church for what? For this boring party? Okay, I don't want to go to that party
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, especially as someone who appreciates capitalism and is starting to appreciate personal finance more, you're literally just giving away your money to something that might not even exist, or at least to a deity, right, that might not even exist. So
I
I find it to
definitely,
be a complete waste of time. You're draining your own bank account. You're draining your time on this potentially, one time only existence that you got on this planet.
yeah. And I think that the point of like even the charity given to church, it's better if you give privately than to give to the church, to give to only the evangelized people by them. That's
Mhm.
another point I always said. Like, why put so many people inside the church where for an hour or more when you could be using their work, do some charity, volunteer, help the community in
Right.
another way, secular. Stop praying for God, go and do the stuff would be much better. That's why I always keep thinking of like, we need a humanist secular church, to have the same idea, to have the thing
Well,
that we atheists lack, that is the community that the
in
religious groups have, and to be able to do things, good things together.
Yeah, we've tried that a little bit in the United States so far. There have been various different secular groups that have tried, like Sunday Assembly. That was a very big popular thing in the
Mhm.
United States. It was sort of a secular alternative to church. You have a lot of these ethical humanist or ethical culture societies. They exist in major cities or major suburban areas throughout the U.S. Those are basically sort of like secular churches. There are some people who really have enjoyed the feeling of going to church and liking the rituals, that when a lot of these people left faith, they wanted to keep the elements
I think it
of
would
church
be awesome
symbols.
if you could congregate and then talk about news, about science, about politics in a
Hmm.
level what we're trying to reach here, I believe, what you're trying to do, to have a more secular humanist and civil conversations atheist group, because we have felt and experienced some new atheism coming with the Four Horsemen in the past,
Hmm.
and that movement kind of died after the death of Hitchens. Um, Sam Harris, Dennett, and all the other guys went through different paths, and
Hmm.
the movement lost its power. And then we felt that it started popping up a little small groups that became strong and in atheism, like the atheist experience show that I always followed and like, and
Hmm.
unhappily I saw the rupture inside that movement as well because of the same problem: leftist,
Yep.
SJW, PC culture, wokeness, and progressiveness. And I think that is the main point of the all new conversation. How we still need what we all atheists have in common is that we don't believe gods, and we're all running away from the intolerance and the authoritarianism of
Yeah.
religious groups. So why would we become that group? So I think,
Exactly, and
yeah,
that was a big problem that we faced. We saw these leftist or social justice warrior, radical feminist, whatever you want to call them, woke activists come into our community. It really started around 9 years ago. They came to a lot of liberals that were in charge of multi-million dollar nonprofit organizations. They claimed that our movement and our conferences were filled with systemic racism, systemic sexism, any type of bigotry you could think of. They claimed that that's what we had. And the many good liberals that were in charge of many of these nonprofits thought, oh, well, I'm against sexism and racism, so I'm going to spend my company's resources, spend my time to make sure that we stomp out the bigotry. and give these people a place in our organizations, on our boards, on our councils, you know, in charge of chapters. And from around 2011 to 2016, these people really rose up the ranks. I didn't see it for a while. Even in 2014 and 15, when this political correctness was starting to get more into our movement and into our culture, I didn't think that they'd fully win or that they would take control of everything. But by the time Reason Rally 2 happened in 2016, I knew then that these people won. They took over the movement. I didn't know what, where we could go from there. And for the next few years, I tried to figure out how is organized atheism going to move forward in the West? How is it going to move forward in the West when all these organizations and all the people that have, years of experience in pushing forward the acceptance of atheists in the West and throughout the entire world kind of given up or have sort of fallen to this ideology or have gotten kicked out? And it's really worried me. And that's one of the reasons why we came to the conclusion, myself and a few others came to the conclusion 2 years ago, that we needed to start a new organization. We needed to continue what the New Atheists started, and we needed to also get involved in numerous other fights that relate to our principles, so we can sort of maintain the very civilization that allows us to be secular, atheistic, forward-thinking people in the first place.
Yeah, I saw you talking to Vincent Freeman, that I also interviewed you, and you mentioned how it happened, the entryism of this left culture into the atheism. We don't know where this start or end is, because we understand that most of atheists would be probably biggest part, or the majority of the atheist movement was leftist to start, and we understand that.
Yeah, most of them, I would argue, would be liberals. Most of them would identify that,
and now we have different levels because of that, the horseshoe structure of the politics, and the way that some extreme left or extreme right tend to be more authoritarian than the centrists, or the ones that are refusing those authoritarianism from both sides, falling into this funnel, becoming more libertarians than liberals. And I think I love that you mentioned that with Vincent, because you seem to have very clear idea of the political agenda of different groups, and that's why that's what's influencing so much into splitting the groups on, like when you say trans woman or not woman, and they oh, now you're kicked out because you're not an atheist anymore. It's but I'm still an atheist, but you're not allowed in this group.
You're not allowed. How dare you? How dare you say something that a good chunk of people would agree is scientifically accurate? And there are people who disagree with me, and that's fine. That's definitely what's happened. After the New Atheist movement kind of collapsed, we saw this in around 2016, the culture kind of changed. What used to be, the cool hip thing of going after religion or going after creationism then became going after feminism, going after the woke left, going after all these sort of different forces at play, which I view to be a good thing. My big concern, especially as president of Atheists for Liberty now, is how can we bring these two culture wars together? How can we bring the science and the rationality and the skepticism from the last culture war and combine that with standing up for civilization, standing up for freedom of speech, standing up for the liberal values that has made up the West? How can we combine those together? Because right now, and I try to make this case to a lot of people in this sort of new culture war 2.0, that atheism is still rising. Even though atheism might not be the coolest thing to talk about anymore, it's still a fact. Our society, the United States, Canada, the UK, Belgium, France, the West, even plenty of places around the world are becoming more secular. It's just a fact, whether we like it or not. I don't think we're going to be having a new religious revival to combat the left. I don't think that's going to happen. So we have to be realists here, and we have to come to the conclusion that, society is becoming more secular. So how can we, in a secular age, keep many of the great things that have made Western civilization and Enlightenment values possible, while simultaneously moving beyond dogma and superstition? And I don't have all the answers. I don't think you have all the answers. I think we're trying to figure out those answers. But I know that the answer is not us going back to faith to fight a new faith. I think that's just going to be dogmatic, and it's going to kill all the progress we've made in the past 10 years.
No, sorry, I'm actually thinking that I reach out to you and Freeman and all the other atheists with that intention. With like, can we find what is the right path to give moral? And in my case, I think there is a reason. There is a answer that is called individualism. That's called objectivism. Those are philosophical brands that give total answer to all our questions, like the same way that science might not give us all the answers right now, but that doesn't mean there is something supernatural.
Yeah,
That is the other thing on
it's
epistemological. Religions have been beaten up and destroyed completely.
yep.
I understand people will still want to keep traditions, and I'm totally fine with
That's
that.
if you want to do that, I'll defend your right to do it. I care about religious freedom too.
Yeah. So what I actually think it is important is to find a way to talk about secularism in all the senses, including and mainly inside the atheism group, to keep
Yep.
us tolerant and far from be authoritarian. The way that we run away from the religious groups, we avoid to become another religious group. If we
That
be able to be secular, it's like,
yeah.
can we sit, talk about factual things, disagree civilly, and keep going and be the
Yeah.
same group and acknowledge that the only thing that makes us the same or that it puts us together in this group is the lack of believing in deities. And we can disagree about the other things, no problem.
That's what we
We should
used to do.
just stop the cancel culture, the black bullying, the thing that have become common from the authoritarians,
Yep.
from some type of inheritance of authoritarianism and intolerance from people that call themselves atheists but would totally ban and shut people for other reasons.
For simple disagreement, for
Yeah.
just simple disagreement from based on like one little issue. I've seen these sort of trends go on where, in the 2000s and into the early 2010s, the hip thing was fighting for reason. I think that's why the new atheism was so popular, and we ended up seeing people hate that because reason sometimes reason goes against people's feelings, and that's why I think the woke left has sort of popped up. And then also afterwards, after the new atheist movement fell, we started to also see this movement on the right, and the IDW, whatever you want to call it, this movement towards wanting responsibility. I think that's why Jordan Peterson became such a huge influential figure. But I would also make the argument that caring so much about responsibility, caring so much about having your place, just being productive, we've seen the extremes of using, say, biblical biblical quotes to sort of justify that. On the far left, you're seeing the rise of this woke religion, and on the far right, you're seeing now a new rise of this sort of trad life, divine right of kings sort of circle, especially among certain young people in my category. And a lot of people have not been able to properly defend themselves against that force on the right because they're afraid of criticizing faith. What's great about us at Atheists for Liberty is that we don't have to worry about that. We can criticize any idea without worrying about being politically, politically
It's
liable.
more free speech than even atheism.
Yes, exactly. We're in a very crucial moment right now where I think atheism and secularism needs to come back in being the counterculture, because right now you have a far left that wants to take away individual and take away individualism and take away the very society that enables secularism and atheism to prosper. And then you're seeing the slow, gradual rise, but concerning rise, of a far right that wants to judge people based on the divine right of kings, who think the Constitution is a joke, who thinks that individualism is a joke. So we're in a very crucial spot here. Look, guys, I know that feminism is a little cringy, and I know that might have driven you away from atheism. That doesn't mean that atheism is wrong.
Yeah.
I'm against third wave, fourth wave
and in the
feminism as
sense
well.
that
I still know that there's no evidence for God.
no, and in the sense that it's like we probably disagree with a third wave feminism. We definitely not against the feminists that brought us the equality we have in the
Correct.
Western
I'm not
society
against that at
nowadays.
all. You know.
So we are just, I think we are more egalitarian than feminism or sexism, because I think what the feminists, the third wave feminists became, is what we actually talk against sometimes, the reparations, Black Lives Matter, and some
Yeah.
anti-racism agendas that in fact are the ones that put the lenses on these people's face, and then
Yeah.
now they see sexism, racism, and everything, bigotry everywhere, when it's
Everywhere.
not. Because
Exactly.
yeah, and my point is like, for example, I've watched and talked so much about this against anti-racism agenda, because for me it's like, if I tell my daughter, okay, let's say I adopted a black kid, and I tell her like, everything bad happened to you is because of your vagina or because of your color. And guess what? Bad things are going to happen to her as well, because life is like that. But now she will be the one that will judge everything bad happening to me is because I'm a victim of society, because I'm a woman, because I'm a woman of color. I could play that game because
And do you know what that
I'm
game
kind of
reminds me
a
of?
woman of color. But that is
Yeah.
disingenuous.
It's
And
very
disingenuous to the
disingenuous.
person that you taught that, because
And you
that
know what
person
that
is brainwashed.
and you know what that sounds like, Fanny? It sounds like, oh, I'm a sinner. I'm inherently a sinner in God's kingdom. I can't improve myself because I'm a victim of sin. I'm
Made
a
like
victim
that.
of the devil and Satan. It's the same exact argument. It's why atheists move so hard to combat third wave feminism, move so hard to combat woke culture, because it is just like a religion. It's the same exact thing. Now, meanwhile, there are some atheists that are talking about going back to faith and using faith to combat a new faith. It's it's
That is
it's
terrible.
not going to
It's
solve
another
anything.
thing
You're
that
you're
I
fighting
don't
fire
like.
with fire. You're just going to create a larger fire. It's not going to
Yeah,
help at
and
all. And you're
in
right.
fact, no, in fact, what you said is totally right, because I saw this happening a little bit with people that I thought were secular, at least. I'll mention someone that is not even much into working recently, but um, um, Lauren Southern, when she did the Borderless
Mhm.
in Europe, and then she was talking about the Islamization of the Europe, or the schemes that they were doing to pass immigrants as refugees, and
Yeah.
bring fake refugees to Europe, and how that was bad to many countries like Germany and other ones that have been suffering from the results already of this massive immigration. Um, and then at that point, I was like, that's cool, because this is all political, and these are very important problems that need to
Mhm.
be focused on. And then one step ahead, it came Jordan Peterson and the new apologetics, what I would call. I'm calling
Mhm.
them like that because these are the people that are, to fight Islam, we need to just bring back our Christian values, or church, Bible studies.
And we can,
Oh, by the
yeah.
way, Christians, the secularism is such an important thing that I did not know. For me, it was like it's something we need to talk so much in South America and in Brazil, when we had
Mhm.
Bolsonaro coming with this slogan that God over everything, God, that He's the new Messiah, that He's going to represent the Christianity in Brazil, or the
Yeah.
Catholicism. And if you're not from His religion, you can't get out of the state,
Yeah.
the country.
And I would ask some of these people, and I'm for we're talking about Peterson. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, at least when it comes to politics and culture.
Yeah,
I think we're
I
on the same
totally
side when it
like
comes to that.
the against identitarianism and this
Yes.
choosing your pronoun, gender pronouns. Yeah, totally.
And he's quite a secular person. He is a man of science. I think he. My question to people that are in this new apologetics is, you know, how are you going to convert everyone back to entire civilizations back to faith when
My
the
Yeah,
stats are proving you otherwise? When and when you have the left, by the way, that is also using faith to justify its violence. You have Black Lives Matter activists going after. I remember I saw this story a few weeks ago. Black Lives
exactly.
Matter went
No,
after
you're
some
saying
of
the
my
right thing. The
friends.
problem is the tribalism that creates these
Yeah.
two gangs fighting each other. This
Mhm.
idea of like, instead of what we needed at that time when Lawrence Southern got that thing, is like to talk about how important it is to be secular, because we can't bring as many Muslims or as many Hindus or any other religion
Yeah.
from any place as soon as they practice their thing in their private life. There is no thing on like crosses or hijabs or any other thing on the public area
Oh, I
arena,
totally agree.
you
I
know?
think I
So
think it has to do with a few things, but I think one of the main things is because it might just not look politically convenient. I like some of Lauren Southern's work too, but Lauren Southern, like myself now, is more on the right, and there is still this small stigma, and it's going away, but there is a stigma that still exists that if you are an atheist, you can't be a conservative or you can't be libertarian. That if you are an atheist, the most rational you can be is like a classical liberal, and you can't even be a Republican, you can't even be a libertarian, you can't be in any of these territories, despite the fact that, or at least in the United States, speaking as an American, the U.S. conservative movement and the U.S. liberty movement is becoming far more secular because of this whole anti-SJW culture. It's a
mhm.
perfect avenue for us to inject secularism in there. And what I don't like is people in that movement, people who live very secular lives but are in that conservative movement, still lying, pretending that
Mhm.
all of us are super faithful when we're not. There are super faithful
No, and
people
the
in
worst thing that
conservatism,
I
there
would
are, but
say
the
is
idea
the
that it's everyone now is a joke.
no, the worst thing I would say is the how condescending is the
Mhm.
idea that's like, oh no, I'm gonna tell them that I'm religious and tell them to follow moral religion because they have low IQ and they cannot figure out the things I figure
Yeah,
out by
that's
myself.
insulting
This
to
is just
religious
so
people.
terrible.
Yeah,
This
and
is
it's
so
insulting to people of faith. It's actually insulting to them. I would never do such a thing to religious people. I live with a religious family. I have many religious friends. I would never do something like that. Oh, religious people are too dumb, so we need to just keep
they need the
conditioning them with these
master to
beliefs
tell them.
while we go to like a conservative conference and like hang out on, I'm on the street at a conservative event where I told everyone to believe in Judeo-Christian values, but now I'm on Tinder looking to get my date in the city the conference is in. Like seriously, is that the game we're going to play? Is that really the game we're going to play? Instead of telling the truth, instead of bettering the movements that we're in, movements that are becoming increasingly more secular, more religiously diverse, that we should band together for common values, for common principles, regardless, by the way, if we're atheists or theists. We should stand for common things that make our society great, and saying as a non-religious person that we need religion and somehow they're all going to go back to religion even though the stats are showing otherwise. It's just not going to work. We're playing a political fantasy because we
Yes.
think, oh, that'll keep us in the movement, that'll keep us in the movement. It's
Or
just like
even
how
the
things were in the
agenda
atheist movement
or
with
even the
social
agenda
justice.
some or narrative that some people have to say like we need to procreate because look at these other groups, like, and then we need to indoctrinate all of
Yeah.
this. That is definitely not the way, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
tell you that I'm scared because the new apologetics are so strong as the left group trying to destroy morals,
Yeah,
as
and
the
we're
conservatives
stuck in
believe.
the middle here trying to normalize things at a
And that is
faster
the
rate.
hard if that is the hard part because we hate it by both sides.
Yeah. The far
The
right doesn't like us, and the
centrists,
far left doesn't like us.
we hate it by both sides. It's not that they
Yeah.
they are only hating each other. That's fine.
Mhm.
We are in the middle being hated by both. But I think the most important thing is to point out that it's like, look, we can all disagree civilly. We try to get, you know, closer to what is truth and reality as
Mhm.
much as possible, and we recognize we have our biases, but we should be able to talk, or we're never going to be able to change our mind if we
Yeah.
cannot talk to the other side. No, and maybe that is the scary part because these people really don't want you to talk to the other side. They don't want you to
Yeah.
change your mind. And that's why it's scary because all these new Christians, new apologetics, they are the indoctrinating people. They are the ones that's like,
Mhm.
you know why not everybody believes God anymore? Because our parents did not do the job. Now we need to do it. And now we have here in, I'm going to say, BC, Canada, we have
Mhm.
Christian Party. And I've read yesterday their plans to put public money in church schools, in religious schools. So
Yeah.
that is how bad these new
That's very bad
apologetic,
optics.
yeah.
Yeah, that does not get. And I'm a big supporter of
And I
religious freedom.
guess people are gonna, a lot of people that are just Christians will vote for that because it's the Christian option. And
Yeah,
that is why secularism is so important because these people are
it's
not even
very
judge
important.
their policies. They are voting because of the big Christian name there.
Exactly. And just like what the left is doing right now, they're voting based on intersectionality. They're going based on that. They're indoctrinated in that faith, that religion, and it is so dangerous right now. And it's my hope that more atheists, more people that are rational, that are going into this non-woke movement, which is very important, speak out and talk about how important secularism is, how that needs to be an important component. Secularism is not going away. Our society is becoming more secular, and we need to come up with secular solutions to
And I
these
even
problems,
mentioned
or else we're doomed.
secularism on sexuality.
Yeah.
Because secularism became something that is not for atheists or religious beliefs anymore. It's about anything. It's about climate change. Can you talk about climate change with some secularism? That I would say, and they were like, what is that? It's like, can we try to lay down the facts, the data, be able to disagree, and maybe go home and think of that in another way, instead of like debating and I win or you win. We all win when we can get common ground and find solutions together. So I would like to bring, because I think this actually is one of the books I received recently, Iconoclasts from Alexander Adams, and he's a critical, and he has done the culture war before. Funny enough, he has drew the toppling of statues much before it has happened, so I guess he was already previewing what's going on, and how to have impossible conversations. Because I've seen you talking about Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay. They are
both are on our advisory council, by the way.
Yes, I know that. I saw you talking to Vincent Freeman, and they're amazing. I actually just received it. My James Lindsay cynical theories, that is Helen Pluckrose that I talked to as well, and it is all about this mythical, fight against this common enemy that even put some new weird terms that don't even make any sense to me. That's like Islamofeminism. What could even that be?
That's called a contradiction.
That's called an oxymoron.
Yeah, exactly.
And but very funny, woke, hilarious, because you can imagine all the jokes about woke that Titanium McGrath, but done and more like Andrew Doyle. And I like to point out the gorilla mindset, because I think you brought out this. In Cernovich talks about how he was framed into thinking in some type of a closed mentality and mindset when he was religious, because most of the religious people that we think we need to give them moral religious morals, because they would never find it out by themselves. That thing, it's negative in the same sense that the person that is religious indoctrinated into religious, growing into their parents, they like, you're bad, you're a sinner, and you are made like that. You don't have any power to change. Yeah. It's more like God made you like that, and you bad or you good, and that's all. And the gorilla mindset is a good breakout of that, because it shows that you actually have power. And I actually think that is the individualism, objectivism. I try to cut off the parts that sometimes I don't agree, but that is the most important thing. I mentioned to Vincent, and I saw you guys also disagreeing. The most important thing is that we can disagree. Nobody's going to represent each other 100%. I don't think we can actually talk about everything and agree in everything, So that is a good thing. And the last one I would bring is the righteous mind, because tries to make a sense of religious morality and morals in general, but I think there is a lot of biases on pushing onto religious, like how people really need, and in my sense is like, no, everybody, even this only, of course it's difficult to say there's only one person in an island, because if you're all alone in an island, there is no moral, or I think it's amoral, because to be moral, to these moral judgments requires more people, okay? But this idea of like, when you create these little groups, and like you mentioned, that is not the right way to fight for secularism, creating new religions, because then you just create righteous groups, righteous minds inside the groups that believe the other group is just bad and we just need to destroy or fight them. And no, we all want the common good, even if we want through different paths, even if we have different beliefs. I don't think the government is there to make us care about each other the way that they are doing now with Corona, because if the government did not force you to wear masks, you would not care about your neighbor. That is not true. The same way that Black Lives Matter that want to say like, oh, some people don't care about Black lives. That's not true. You know, so it's like, of course, there are people that have their they are bigots, they have biases, they have terrible judgments about other people, and sometimes through inheriting things that cannot be changed. And that's why it's silly to judge someone because of their color or their belief or anything. You should judge people by their results, their acts, how they live their lives. And I think secularism, or at least this new power, this new atheism that comes with you, with Vincent, with new people that have this idea of like, no, we don't need religions to be moral. We don't need religions. We don't need gods. We don't need masters. We all can figure out that I don't want to be killed or be robbed. I'm not going to do that to others. And with those two principles, it's good enough to make a good society.
That's how society has functioned for thousands upon thousands of years, predating many religious beliefs. It's just a simple fact about human civilization. We're going to continue to thrive, but let's thrive based on the best systems and the best things that work. I would argue the best things that work are democracy, individualism, human rights, various things that keep us good. And I don't want the far left or the far right destroying any of that. And I don't want to go either into the religion of intersectionality or the religions of old in order to fix the problems that exist today, because it'll only continue on our path of societal degradation.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit of the Atheists for Liberty. How this plan works, how you guys are organized, how people get to be part of it or follow and know your work and help if they want, you know?
Yeah, so Atheists for Liberty is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We care about sustaining individual rights and knowledge and promoting the separation between religion and government. We care about free speech, free thinking, and freedom for all. Our website can be found at atheistsforliberty.org. It's a great site. Membership, by the way, for the organization, folks, is $10 a year. $10 a year, and you can write that off on your taxes. $5 a year for students, and you can also upgrade your membership if you want to help us. We need as much help as we can get right now. We need volunteers. We need people helping us. We need people helping us generate community online on the internet. We have a members only Facebook group. We have a growing Discord server. We're trying to do what we can to get active. We premiered at CPAC in February. We're going to be in February of this year. We're going to be back there in 2021. And in December, we're going to be present at the Turning Point USA Student Action Summit. We're going to be releasing more information about that later on. Again, membership is only $10 a year. That's atheistsforliberty.org. You can find us on most major social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, you name it, YouTube. Just search up Atheists Liberty, and you'll be able to find us. So please give us a follow. Contact us. We'd love to have you be a part of our organization and what we are doing now.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for coming. I think I'm going to finish here and then we can keep talking and maybe even book another conversation in the future to talk about whatever people want to talk here. I'm trying to do something more in Brazil. Armin have asked me to go with some type of atheist republic in Portuguese, and it's very in the beginning, but I probably will share this interview with them as well, and later work on subtitles in Portuguese.
I'd be honored.
And yeah, thank you. And that I'm totally gonna be associated to atheists, Atheists for Liberty, because I think that is the need. I always felt that atheists are like, we've heard so much. How can you herd cats? They just like don't believe in God, so you cannot make a group. But I think we all need to be together in the principle of be tolerant, be against authoritarianism, be able to, have civil conversations. The freedom should be the main brand of the atheism.
It doesn't matter what the trend is at the moment, but I don't care if the internet trend says that we need to convert to radical Islam in order to be cool online and to look edgy online. Okay, it doesn't forget trends. Okay, it was cool that the trend was in favor of the new atheists in the 2000s, and I'm a big fan of Peterson. I'm glad the trends have went his way also, and in the way of combating social justice, or what is seen as social justice now. But we need to fight for our principles. Okay, and tomorrow our trends could be completely different.
We need to give the new atheists that answer that they feel they lack. That's like, where do you get your morals if you don't have God in your heart? It's like, oh, you get from thinking. That's the difference of humans from other animals. We are not just behaving naturally. We have more than just intuition. We have more than
That's
just
why you're
the
hosting
animals.
a podcast, and that's why I'm wearing a good suit. You know.
Definitely. And I think that is the answer. Maybe and I actually mentioned it's funny because David said when I interviewed him, like, David, you need to be this leader of the new atheism or whatever I'm trying to get. I don't know if it's going to be you, Raka, Yaron Brook. I talked to many atheists that have a good idea of what is objectivism, what is individualism, that those two principles are good enough to give us objective morals. And I think Sam Harris has gone through this as well, but it's loose. A lot of, like you mentioned, there is a lot of empiricism in this word nowadays on our philosophers and influencers that makes them sometimes step backwards and say like, oh, the utilitarian role of religion. And I don't like that. We've mentioned before how we don't think religions are the only way to get to be moral. And I hope you can lead that. I hope you can be the leader of the atheists.
I hope so too.
I hope you can be the for objectivists, for individualists, for objective morals, and give answer to these new atheists that sometimes they are like, well, now I've been challenged to explain where my morals come from, and many of them believe it came from some type of religious background. When my sense is no, it's from the community that we also need to create in now
I
in
would
the atheists.
agree with you. And people are losing faith every single day. Religious affiliation is decreasing. We need to find other solutions. I don't have every solution. You don't either. But this, like you talked about some of the other figures here, I hope this is sort of the beginning of a rebirth of logical people that saw the atheist movement fall, who are going to stand back up and continue the fight for reason along with sort of the new culture war that started today. It's very necessary.
Is the new enlightenment. Hope so.
I hope so.
Thank you very much for coming. People, check out Thomas Sheedy and all his brands, Atheists for Liberty. Give a like, subscribe, and see you next video. Thank you very much for coming, Thomas.
Thank you, Fanny.
See you guys. Stop recording right now.